to the first episode of Empowering You. Perhaps you're wondering what Empowering You is and how people maintain it. It's about their health. And today joining me is Loree Walker of the Facilitated Healing Wellness Resource Center. Loree, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning.
Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got involved in what you're doing today.
Well, how this came to be was actually through my own healing journey, and that's what I'm going to talk about today.
Okay, good. And what was your healing journey?
Well, at a very young age, I knew from the first day of kindergarten was my first recollection that something wasn't right. And just to tell viewers ahead of time that I'm going to talk very candidly about the illness, and I do that because I need to reach people that suffer with this illness, and in order to do that, I need to speak very candidly. So anyways, the first day of kindergarten, that's the first day I realized something wasn't quite right. When the bus came, I was sitting on the toilet.
Oh my goodness.
And in a lot of pain.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my first recollection of it. However, it wasn't until the summer between my 7th and 8th grade year that I was officially diagnosed with ulcerative colitis.
Okay.
Falls under the category of, the bowel diseases, very similar to Crohn's.
Mm-hmm.
They're different in some ways. Patterns of ulceration and location are different between the two diseases. Treatments are the same, whether it be the different medications that are used or alternative types of treatments. They're treated the same way. So.
Okay. When were you just said you were diagnosed and you were in kindergarten or waiting for the bus?
Well, that's when I knew something was wrong.
It's wrong.
I
Okay.
wasn't officially diagnosed until my summer between 7th and 8th grade because there were no outward signs.
Okay.
Prior to that. I had all those years from kindergarten on up, I had lots of pain in my tummy, lots of chills, but there was no outward signs, for my parents to really know that there really was something wrong. I just knew that my tummy hurt and I didn't feel good. And then for about a year, the first outward sign was that I started with rectal bleeding.
Okay.
And that went on for about a year before I finally told my parents. And that's when I was taken in and it was discovered that I had ulcerative colitis.
What was it like having a chronic illness at that age and today yet?
Oh, it is, I started with it at such a young age. I couldn't have answered that question before I was well. Now I can, because when I was sick, I didn't know anything else. That's all I knew.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I'm well, I can answer that question better. When you have a chronic illness, many times it's like you run. You're like on the gerbil wheel, and you don't stop out of fear, thinking that if I stop, it's going to get me.
Right.
And it's exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
Anxiety levels, that go along with, particularly this kind of illness, are really, really high. There's other things that can come into play. Depression, when you can't do the things that you want to do, and when you're in constant pain, is a huge factor. So.
Were you ever put on a special diet for that type of disease?
Yeah, actually, initially, and things have changed a great deal throughout the years. Initially, I was eating baby food.
Well.
Very soft baby food. The other thing that they would do is they would not let you eat at all for a period of time and do strictly intravenous. I had TPN, a shunt implanted in my chest at one time, where for 2 weeks that's all I got was through an IV. And that has changed. They pretty much let you eat now through it. They've discovered that doesn't have a great effect on it. It is an autoimmune disease, which makes it very difficult to deal with because autoimmune diseases behave very differently, even though there can be someone sitting right next to me that has been diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, it presents very differently in different people. And the response to different treatments can be very, very different. So what I might respond to in treatment, this person may not.
Okay.
So you really have, it's very individualized. It's any kind of autoimmune disease is very difficult to deal with.
Did you try anything to try and heal yourself before you went to see a doctor? I know I would be like that. I would try everything before I would go.
Right. Well, I was young. I was
Right.
only middle school. So, no, just to the doctor and started with the known treatments, which they haven't changed a lot as far as actual medications. The standard treatment as far as prescription medication is still prednisone.
It is.
Yeah, high doses, long periods of time. That's the only thing that kept it at least somewhat under control. Anti-inflammatories, salicyliphidine, acecol. At one point, thoroughly by accident, they discovered that the anti-rejection medications given to transplant patients can many times help calm the symptoms. And so there have been different points in my life that I've been on anti-rejection medications. It wasn't until I was much older and was able to just take the bull by the horns on my own that I started to try alternative things.
Did that type of illness, does that curtail your activities or your everyday living?
Very much, very much. My regimen, even when I was on traditional medical treatment, when you're having 36 bowel movements a day,
Oh my goodness.
and they're bloody, you're very weak because you're very anemic, and you can't be that far from a bathroom. So I really could hardly walk a half a block. So anything that I accomplished in my life, which was through being married and raising 2 children and having teenage foster children and going to college full-time and working full-time while I was very ill, was sheer determination. Because physically, when I look back now, I think, wow, I should not have been putting one foot in front of the other. And relating back to when I was initially diagnosed, I remember very, very clearly. It was on a Wednesday.
Okay.
And my mom took me to one doctor, and he immediately sent me across town to a different doctor. And I was put in the hospital right away. And that doctor said he was surprised I could put one foot in front of the other. I was that anemic. The Saturday before, I had run in, at that time, the JCs, if you remember the old JCs
I remember
organization.
the JCs very well.
They had track meets, and I
Uh-huh.
had run in a state JCs track meet in the Milwaukee area and taken third in the 220-yard dash, which we don't have anymore because it's all metric. And that was just a few days prior. And then I go to the doctor, and he says, you should not even be able to put one foot in front of the other. You're that anemic. So, sheer determination.
So at that point, being so anemic, did you receive blood transfusions?
Not at that time. There was another point later on in the illness that I did, which was scary.
I'm sure.
At that time, there was no awareness of AIDS or anything like that, and so things weren't tested. It was shortly after that the whole AIDS thing started to come out. And fortunately, because of that one blood transfusion, I have been checked and it's fine. But that's a scary thought when that all started to come. You think, oh, I had a blood transfusion. That was before they were testing.
Yeah.
So, those kinds of things, and it just adds to your anxiety level.
Right.
That goes along with it. So,
How do you maintain your level now of the illness?
well,
Because it's an illness that it's not going to leave you. Is that correct?
it's not curable.
Right. Okay.
However, what I did was when I started to go alternative, what happened was, because I would be in the hospital several times a year, many times for 12 to 14 days at a time.
Oh my goodness.
And so what ended up happening is, on 2 different occasions, I was approached by my doctors and was strongly advised to have the surgery where they remove the entire large intestine. And the first time, they didn't really push it. The second time, the surgeon really, he yelled at me and said I needed to have this surgery. And there was a couple of reasons that they really advised strongly that I have it. One reason is because the length of time I had had it. And at this time now I was 30 years old.
Okay.
So I'd had it for a long time. And the second reason was I had developed what they called rugs of polyps in my colon. Literally thousands of polyps lining my colon. And they said, we can biopsy the ones we think look the worst, but we cannot guarantee that we can biopsy the ones that are in a dysplasia stage or even in a malignancy stage. And so for that reason, they strongly recommended that I have the surgery. And I, at that time, being 30 years old, I just didn't feel I was ready for that. And I decided right then and there, laying in that hospital bed, that I was going to find an alternative that worked or I was going to die. And I was ready to die because I had no quality of life.
No, that's right.
I was
Not at
in
that point.
constant pain.
So what was your alternative then?
Well, fortunately at that time, I had been doing my student teaching and connected with a gal that had just started with Shaklee nutritional supplements. And so she connected me with a nutritionist out of Illinois who for 3 years I worked with only over the telephone.
Uh-huh.
And what he did is he gave me a baseline of supplements to start with, okay? And that's all, just the baseline, because like I said, every person that has any autoimmune disease responds very, very differently in treatment and how it presents. So he said, this is your baseline. He said, once you get established with this baseline, then one at a time, play with the supplements by increasing them a little bit and listen to what your body is doing. And that was some of the best advice right there, is to tune in and really feel how my body was responding. And so we did that and got very consistent with taking the supplements. And for the first 6 months, didn't see a lot of change. At the 6-month point, all of a sudden, whoa, things started to happen. And from the 6-month point to the 1-year point, the bleeding and the many, many bowel movements decreased until at 1 year, there was no bleeding. There was no major, not many, many, many bowel movements. It was very regular. Between the 1-year point and the 2-year point, what was really interesting is that not only did I feel myself getting stronger, but I literally could feel the consistency of my tissue changing. It was mushy before. And you think about all of the years that I was so deprived nutritionally. There was no way, even if what I ate was really, really healthy, could it be absorbed in the digestive system because it just went right through. So I was very, very deprived for many, many years of nutrients. And it has been amazing. I can keep it. I've had a couple flare-ups since then, 2 of which were pretty severe, but I could link them specifically to certain events. One was a food-related event, and one was an extremely intense and personal stressful situation. I was able then to bump back up on therapeutic levels of the supplements, and over a short period of time was able to get it under control. So what that did for me, and I had stopped taking all medications.
Okay.
That was my choice. And so what the supplement regimen has done for me is to empower me. I didn't feel helpless anymore. It's like, I can do this. I can control this animal. And very empowering. I did have to make a few diet changes while I was in the healing process. Now, I really have no limitations on what I eat. As long as I don't, with anything, if you don't overdo, you're fine.
Correct, right.
And then the other thing I learned was, remember I said about being on that hamster wheel?
Yeah, yes.
I learned that I had to stop. And that was scary. It was scary to stop. but I had to. I had to stop and allow my body rest and the energy to be used towards the healing process.
Okay.
So it's a combination of your mental, the way you think about things, physically taking care of yourself, and that's whether it's nutrition or activity or whatever it may be. And then the spiritual aspect, which is very individual and personal to each person, to maintain overall wellness.
So, if I remember correctly, you ran in a K run something. Tell us about that, because I know there was a lot of good publicity about that.
Yes. Once
And I didn't know the background of this, but now this really needs, this needs to be told that it can be done.
It can. And, you know, all those years, I really couldn't seriously hardly walk a half a block. And once I got well, I started walking, which was my main exercises, and working out, and just finally being able to be active. And about 4.5 years ago, a friend of mine said, I want to jumpstart my workout program. Do you want to do this running program with me? And I said, running?
Hello?
Okay, I'll try anything once. And then she said, 5:45 in the morning. And I'm like, are you crazy? Not being a morning person, but okay, I'll do it to be, supportive of her, and I'll try anything once. And that was actually, it's a program called Couch to 5K, which anybody can go to on the internet and find. It's free to everybody. And we did it. And she ended up having some trouble with her knee and has not continued to run. I continued on, however, and ran in many 5K races or 3.1 mile races. And then I decided, well, maybe I can do a half marathon, which is 13.1. So I trained, and I did my first half marathon in Madison several years ago. And when I was done, I said never again. Went on to run 8 more.
So the never again didn't stay with you.
No. And then decided, you know what, maybe I can do a full marathon. So last fall, decided that I would start the training program, and trained through the winter.
Now, when you say training program, what do you have to do in that program in order to get ready for the marathon?
Well, there's many ways, and you can just go online. There's many different
Okay.
types of programs, and I actually looked at 3 different programs. And my program entailed, I did my regular like 5 to 6 mile runs, 2, sometimes 3 times a week, and then on the weekend added a mile each
Okay.
weekend, and gradually got closer and closer to that marathon distance. Now, most training programs don't take you the full distance, so this program took me up to 20 miles.
Okay.
So went to Phoenix in January, and the day before I turned 50, I ran a marathon.
Neat.
And it was one of the most incredible feelings I ever had.
That's okay.
To finish that.
That's okay.
My goal was to finish it under my own power in an upright position. And I was hoping for around 5 hours, maximum 5.5. And I did it, and I did it in 5 hours, 28 minutes, and 7 seconds. But when I came around the end of the bleachers of the stadium down at Arizona State University, and the event is sponsored. It was the P.F. Chang Rock and Roll Marathon. And so they have the P.F. Chang horses there with the big balloon arch. And when I came around that corner,
Yeah, it's
it was
okay.
amazing. It was
Yeah.
it was really amazing.
It's something that you accomplished, that you set
Yeah.
out to do,
Yeah.
and you did it.
Yes, I did. And the really neat thing that came from the running of all of this, just starting that running program, is that now I coach the Couch to 5K program. And it has changed women's lives. And it's not just for women, but women tend to be the ones that come
Yeah.
out for it.
Yeah.
And it's empowering. You know, some of these ladies have never done anything like this before. And I have all age groups, you know, from, I have some high school girls all the way up to 50 and 60-year-old women, and they've never done anything like this before. And one gal ended up, you know, she did the program. It felt great. She thought, well, maybe I can do a half marathon. So I helped her train for a half marathon, and she did it. And she just said, I feel like I can do anything. And, you know, and not just physically, you know, she thought about going on and back to school and getting her master's.
Great.
You know, and she's
Yeah.
got a family at home now, but she said it really made me feel, empowered me to the point where I feel like I can do anything. And she has transitioned, and actually I know that she just did her first triathlon
Okay.
in June.
Well, that's a feather in your hat.
It's so fun. I've never been, you know, I couldn't be much of an athlete because of the illness. And no way did I ever look at myself as a coach. But being on that side of things has been such a neat experience, and relating back to what I went through and how it made me feel to reach those goals, and to be a part of helping other people experience this and reach their goals for the first time.
Okay.
That's been just a whole nother aspect that has come out of this whole process of my healing journey.
The rewards are super.
Yes, yes.
Good. Well, tell us about, you have a business that's named Facilitated Healing Wellness Resource Center.
Yeah, and
And
that,
I think, according to the Daily Times, that was just started not too long ago. Tell us what you do there.
Yes.
And your clientele.
Sure. Well, you know, this whole thing really was born out of my chronic illness and,
Okay.
those dark places that I had to come from and had to go through my healing journey. I was a special education teacher for 16 years, 13 here in Watertown. And through that healing journey, and everything that I learned, I realized that I really wanted to go into the healthcare field and share how people have much more ability within themselves to help themselves heal, like I did.
Right.
And so what I chose to do, because part of my healing journey involved learning the value of relaxation to the healing process, that I went to massage therapy school in Madison and started building my practice out of my home while I was still teaching full time. And it got to a point where I had built it to full time and I was still teaching full time. And my husband kind of said, whoa. So I took a 1 year leave of absence from my teaching position, and I have not gone back. I have not been teaching for 4 years. And I started to specialize in a specific area. It's the John Barnes method of myofascial release. And once I started to do that, boy, my practice just went off the charts.
Okay.
And I said to my husband, I said, I need some help here. I need someone that can do the regular, you know, kinds of massage so that I can focus on this particular method. And so we started looking around, and we looked at storefronts and downtown and strip malls and old houses, and we had looked at an office building. And then our daughter, who had been married for several years and had said that she probably would never have children, announced that they were having their first child. And so, okay.
Surprise.
Yeah, so our stuff has to go on hold because you want to be there for that event.
Yep, that's right.
And so the baby is now 17 months old and is going to be a big sister shortly. But last summer we decided that, okay, we can pick up our ball again and start to, you know, look at buildings again. And through a series of events, the actual owner of the building ended up on my treatment table. And I said, you know, I did all the MFR, and I said, he says, wow. And I said, yeah. I said, this is why my practice is really busy and I need to expand and we want to buy something. And he says, well, I have a building for sale. And lo and behold, it was the one that we had looked at previously and were very drawn to. And so that process is in process right now. But the end of January, finally, we said, you know, this really has to happen. And I was getting frustrated because you know, things weren't happening as fast as I would have liked them to be happening.
Yeah, sometimes we want it to go at a faster pace.
I know. And finally, you know, on a Friday night in January, I said, that's it, I'm done, I quit, I'm going to stay working right here. And something happened over the weekend, which I don't really quite know yet what happened, but by Monday afternoon, I had the keys to the building in my hand.
Isn't that something?
And so beginning of February, we started cleaning. It had sat empty for probably 7 years, that whole upper level. The building is located on Doctors Court, 1517 Doctors Court. It also has a Main Street side, right below the Oak Hill Cemetery on the curve there. And so we started cleaning and painting, and we had to do very, very little actually to get it ready. And I started working out of there on February 14th, and it has grown now. I think I have about 16 other different kinds of practitioners that are working out of there.
Isn't that amazing?
And the other really neat part of that is we did not actively seek out any of these people. They all just kind of ended up in the fold of this whole project. And I have all of their pictures up.
Okay.
And I stand there and I look at them, and I don't know what I did to deserve such a blessing, because I look at those people, and not only are they really, really good at what they do, but they are the most genuine, loving people I have ever met in my life.
And that's what it takes, love and tender loving care to make it go. Right, right.
Yeah. So we're building.
Good. So Loree, at this point, what an interesting conversation that you shared with our viewing audience today. I don't think people realize that you were the crux of why it happened. And you are the blessing of why it's continuing today. And so, is there anything in this episode you'd like to tell our viewing audience before we sign off?
Well, I really want people to know that it's a balance. Your healing journey is a balance. It's a balance of it could be prescription medication. It could involve a surgery. But it also involves you taking back your power and taking a very, very active role, becoming knowledgeable of whatever it is you're dealing with, and branching out and finding what that balance is. And it's going to involve taking better care of yourself physically, eating better. A comprehensive supplement approach might be necessary. Activities, and then your spiritual aspect, you know, whatever that choice is, just taking better care of yourselves and realizing that you have so much more ability within yourself to help yourself be well and heal. And you know, I think that what I did is a good example of that. And it's really a balance between working with your medical doctor and finding some of these other things that are going to bring it all together. And it's a delicate balance, and it's different for every person.
Yeah, every person is different, right? So this concludes our first episode of Empowering You. What's going to be the next one, Loree? Can you tell us or not?
Yeah, we have many, many different offerings at my facility. And what I really want people to do, I want to help them to know what some of these different modalities are, what some of their choices are. And so we are going to be having our different practitioners present on their gifts and what it is they do.
Great.
And I'm hoping that the next one is going to be our body talk therapy that she will present, that she'll be our next one.
So in other words, each body has a language.
Yeah. Yeah,
Good or bad.
we have to listen to it. We have
Right.
to tune in and listen to it. And I have this thing called the felt sense. And we have to get back to that. Some people might call it your intuition, but it really is a visceral sense, a feel. And that felt sense will never lie to you, and it's always truthful. It's always accurate.
Okay.
So tune into it.
So on behalf of us down at the cable studio here and Loree Walker, thanks for watching today.